Oh my god, you're from Nepal? I love Mount Everest. Oh shit, you're from Nepal? How's Mount Everest? Damn, you're from Nepal. Have you climbed Mount Everest? No. And you probably shouldn't either. Alright, that gag's over. Fuck, I chose the worst day to do this. Oh, I can breathe. Hello! Dollar Store David Attenborough here. And as you can guess from that fucking intro, I am half Nepalese. And I actually lived in Nepal for 5 years. And obviously, the only thing people really hear when you say you're from Nepal, since I've been here in England for about the past 3 years, is... Everest? 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 How's Mount Everest? So, I feel like, since it's the only thing my mother country is really associated to foreigners is Mount Everest, if even that, I thought it would be time to, like, just do a little educational video about it. Let's start off with the name itself, Mount Everest. It was called Mount Everest because white people weren't bothered to pronounce Sagarmatha. I wish I was joking. So the local Nepali name for Mount Everest is Sagarmatha. But George Everest was the assistant to superintendent, and then the superintendent of the Great Trigonometric Survey of India, which was carried out by the British East India Company. I know that sounds boring, because it is. The Royal Geographical Society of Britain, I assume, renamed Peak 15 to Mount Everest in honor of George Everest's name. Even though, you know, it already had a name. Several local names. Thing is, George Everest didn't even put his name forth to have the mountain named after him. No, he didn't. It was his successor and fucking local fanboy, Andrew Scott Wah. It's like cough, but like waff. Andrew Scott, his successor, put forth George Everest's name to rename the mountain because he wanted to name it after his illustrious predecessor, and that the mountain, which they just recently calculated at this time, 1865, that the mountain was the tallest peak in the world. Andrew Scott, he stated, and I quote, the peak 15, it was without any local name that we can discover. Even though that's horseshit, of course it had a local name, because people were fucking living on the... Tibetans and Nepalese people have been living off the mountains for fucking centuries, mate. You think we wouldn't name our homes? The reason why he said it, the reason why he said that it was without any local names that the British could discover was because the British weren't allowed within, like, the local areas near fucking Sagarmatha. There were several local names for it. And scholars in India even suggested, like, native tongue names that they believed were correct. But the British weren't allowed in those areas. They kind of surveyed it from afar. So they asked the locals a bit more south if they had any names for the mountains, and of course they didn't. What? You don't go into someone else's neighborhood and goes like, oh yeah, like a few miles down there, what's that house called? You don't know? Doesn't have a name. Having just completely abandoned the idea of asking the people who lived on the mountain what the mountain's name was, Andrew Scott said we should name it after Everest. The Royal Geographical Society debated this, and they disregarded all the local names, they disregarded the native tongue names that the scholars suggested. And I need to point out here, George Everest, 1, had nothing to do with the mountain. 2, had never even seen the mountain personally, like physically. And 3, the only connection George Everest had to Mount Everest was that he hired Andrew Scott, who surveyed it, and he hired Radhanath Sikdar, the guy who was the first person to officially calculate how tall Mount Everest was. That's the only connection George Everest had to the actual mountain. Even George himself was like, nah, don't name the mountain after me. He was convinced that the mountain shouldn't be named after him because, to put it very lightly, he had nothing to do with the mountain, and also his name was hard to pronounce in the native tongues. So they called him Mount Everest anyways. So yeah, Everest is named after a man who had never seen the mountain personally, didn't have anything to do with the mountain, and didn't want the mountain named after him. And it was because of his fanboy successor, Andrew Scott, basically wanting to write his name in the heavens and disregarding all the local and native names and not doing enough research. So, the height of Everest is 8,848.86 meters tall, or if you want it in feet, 29,031.7 feet tall. It is the tallest peak in the world, and it was first summited by Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay in 1953. Climbing Mount Everest since then has become less of a great sort of human achievement, like a Herculean achievement. It's gone from that to a gimmick. Between 1953, so the initial first summit by Edmund Hillary and the great Tenzing Norgay, between 1953 and 1988, there were only 260 ascents attempts. I'm just going to say ascents. There were 260 ascents in that time period. Then, between 1988 and 2003, the total skyrocketed to 1,922 ascents. And if you think that's bad, between 2003 and 2019, and remember, up until 2003, the total was only roughly reaching 2,000, but in the span of 16 years, that total shot up to 9,153 ascents up the mountain. Now, you're probably wondering, that doesn't sound like too much. It's not even 10,000. However, these pictures here from insert date, I'm pretty sure 2012, 2019, these pictures on screen right now, is the peak of Mount Everest. There is a traffic jam on top of Mount Everest. Who the fuck creates a traffic jam on Mount Everest? Mount Everest, you picture Mount Everest, right? You picture like climbing the tallest mountain in the world. You think serene peaks. You think, the beauty of the Himalayas out before you. You think of finally achieving peacefulness within you. No, you have a bunch of tourists taking pictures of themselves. You have a bunch of amateur climbers holding up the line because they weren't trained properly in how to descend. There were some people, by the way, in that traffic jam who stated that they had to wait 45 minutes to up to an hour and a half just to walk up to the peak. Not even climb the mountain. They've already climbed it just to walk up to the summit. And that's very dangerous. And I'll tell you why later. What people need to understand is you can't climb Mount Everest all year round. You can't. There is a specific summiting window that the local Sherpas, who are the local guides and we'll get into later, are aware of, that the weather conditions are perfect, or the most suitable for humans to climb up the tallest peak in the world, Sagarmatha. And that's usually 10 days in the month of May, usually, during springtime. However, if that year there are bad weather conditions, that 10-day window where you can climb Mount Everest shrinks to about 3 days. 3 days of climbing Mount Everest. And remember, between 2003 and 2019, total ascents shot up by about 7,000. That's it. Can't do math. That's a lot of people. So, what happens when you have a lot of people trying to climb the world's tallest mountain in a very short period of time? There's trash. Holy shit, there's a lot of trash on Everest. And a lot of shit, like human shit, like feces. When climbers go up Mount Everest, they take a lot of equipment with them. And they take themselves with them. What does the human body produce? Shit. And when you take equipment, what does equipment produce? Trash, usually. There are metric tons of trash on Everest now. And metric tons of shit, of human waste on Mount Everest right now. To the point where it's poisoning the water supplies that flow down from Mount Everest. The waste that climbers are leaving behind is polluting the environment and damaging local livelihoods, or locals who depend on that water source. If you want some numbers, no one really knows how much trash is up there, because there's a lot of trash. But Eco Everest cleanup expedition led by Dawa Stephen Sherpa, each year since 2008, this cleanup expedition has retrieved 15,000 kilograms, or 33,070 pounds of trash. There's been so much trash collected from the mountain. In 2012, some Nepali artists were able to make a sculpture out of 1.5 metric tons of trash that were fucking taken off the mountain. And it doesn't stop. In 2019, the Nepalese government announced that 24,200 pounds of rubbish, including human waste and stuff like empty oxygen cylinders, plastic bottles, cans, batteries, food wrappings, fecal matter, and kitchen waste. All of that was on the mountain, 24,000 pounds in 1 year. That was the cleanup for 1 year. This happens every year. Every year we see cleanup expeditions try to just ease the burden that climbers put on this mountain by just leaving their shit everywhere. If you think damage to the environment, damage to this fucking pristine mountain is bad, there are a lot of deaths on Everest. About 300 people have died trying to climb Mount Everest up till date. You think it's not that bad, but 1/3 of them are the local Sherpas. Now, important to note the difference. There's Sherpas, which are the ethnic group of Nepal, and then there are Sherpas, who are like the mountain guides. A lot of Sherpas are Sherpas, but I don't think all Sherpas are Sherpas. I'm saying Sherpas a lot, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. I'm very sorry. Mom, please don't kill me. Oh, I'm gonna be disowned by like all of my Nepali friends. They're gonna be like, Akash, you fucking whitewashed son of a bitch. It's not a fun thing. Because, and why? Because this is their livelihoods. This is their jobs. Their job is to climb the mountain, to guide people up and down the mountain, to carry equipment, to make sure the passages are safe for climbers who come from abroad. They know the mountain like the back of their hand. Like you see these climbers who climb up Mount Everest once. These Sherpas have done it multiple times. It's their job. Fucking Tenzing Norgay, one of the first people to ever summit Mount Everest. That wasn't his first time climbing the mountain. No, sir. He had reached 8,595 meters, 28,199 feet, the previous year as a member of the 1952 Swiss expedition, and his efforts on that expedition led to new routes being opened up on Everest, which led to his later success summiting Mount Everest with Edmund Hillary. He had been a high-altitude porter in 3 official British attempts to climb Mount Everest from the northern Tibet side in the 1930s. He helped Earl Denman in 1947 and had taken part in various other climbs around the Indian subcontinent. When you see expeditions to Mount Everest, they focus on the climber that's there, you know? The guy who came from fucking England, wanted to conquer Everest, show to the world that he could. What you less see is the fact that there are these guides, these Sherpas, that have done it multiple times and will do it fucking again. But because they spend so much time on the mountain, they're more likely to die. One-time climbers, you go up the mountain, you go down. You're more likely to survive than a Sherpa who keeps going up and up and up because their livelihood depends on it. Now, you're probably wondering, how are they up there? How are we getting traffic jams at the top of the world? Let me let you in on a little secret, my friend. There are 2 ways to scale Everest. There's one where you start on the Tibetan side, and that is controlled by the Chinese government, who are a bit strict and have regulations on who's allowed and how many permits are allowed to be given to Everest climbers. Then you have the Nepalese side. Up until 2019, all you really needed to climb Mount Everest was $11,000 US dollars for the Everest permit and a doctor's note saying you are physically fit. That's it. There were no limits on how many permits were given out, and anyone with $11,000 and a doctor's note could do it. You could just go. Fucking, if I raised $11,000 and talked to my doctor nice enough, I could fucking climb Mount Everest. Can I? No. In an interview with Bryant Gumbel for Real Sports, a HBO show, the then CEO of the Nepal Tourism Board, Deepak Raj Joshi, admitted that he believed only around 50% or 55% of the climbers that they permitted to go up were actually qualified. Half of the people climbing Mount Everest are not qualified to be there. And remember, this is Mount Everest. This is no joke. There is a level above 8,000 meters, 26,247 feet. The level above there, you get so little oxygen. It's known as the death zone. You get so little oxygen, your body starts killing itself. Minute by minute, cell by cell, even if you have extra oxygen with you. Above 8,000 meters is the death zone. Every minute counts. Your brain, the main center of coordination for your whole body, slowly starts expanding, trying to break out of your own skull, fails to do that, squeezes through your spine. Your lungs fill up with fluid. You start coughing so bad you might even crack your ribs. You start seeing things, hearing voices, talking to imaginary people. Temperature confusion. Fucking strokes, heart attacks. And remember, this is in the death zone. Above 8,000 meters. And Everest is only 8,848.86 meters. So you should be fine if you move in and out of the death zone quickly. Remember those photos? That was at the peak of Mount Everest. That was in the death zone. And people were waiting 45 minutes to 1 hour and a half in that death zone. Every minute in there is another minute your body's dying. And that's why in 2019, they saw not only the highest amount of permits the Nepalese government allowed, but also probably the highest, most deadliest climber deaths that year. Why do they do it? You can't blame the Nepalese government too much, because Nepal is still a developing country. Their GDP is roughly 30 billion US dollars right now. And that sounds like a lot, but compared to developed countries, it's not. Mount Everest alone brings in 300 million US dollars for the tourism sector in Nepal. That doesn't seem like much. 300 million US dollars annually is 35 billion Nepalese rupees annually. $300 million is is a little bit over 1% of Nepal's GDP. Again, that doesn't seem like much, but think about it. 1% of Nepal's whole economy comes from this one fucking mountain and people trying to climb it. If they had 10 Mount Everests, 1/10 of their economy is sorted. That's it. Nepal is heavily dependent on their tourism sector. And Mount Everest makes a big part of that. And remember, it's not just the Nepalese government profiting off this. It's the local guides, it's the hotels, it's the drivers, it's the equipment makers, it's the maintenance teams. It's local people's livelihoods also depend on Everest. So you can see how it's kind of a double-edged sword. You regulate it too much, people could go into poverty. You regulate it too little, people start dying, and the mountain starts feeling the weight. It's not an easy situation. One of the biggest problems, I believe at least, and I think a lot of people will agree with this, is that tourists who come to do it, it's a gimmick for them. Mountaineers all over the world, the international mountaineering community agrees. Everest, at least from the Nepalese side, is not a technical climb. If you have the stamina, if you have the breathing technique, if you know how to put one foot over the other, as long as you're guided by Sherpas and have the right equipment and the right team, you can climb Mount Everest. Again, up until 2019, all you needed, $11,000, doctor's note. A lot of inexperienced climbers climb Mount Everest simply because they can say the sentence, I climb Mount Everest. One of the original people who summited it, Edmund Hillary, he said in an interview in 2000 that he was disappointed because he had spoken to a lot of the climbers who climbed it after him, and he realized that none of them cared about the mountain or mountaineering or the adventure. They cared about the name. The name that the original guy didn't even want on the mountain. Everest. What's the purpose of this video? I don't know. It's kind of like the other Rant video. I just give you facts and tell you shit that drove me up the wall this week. And all of you can suffer with it too. But I think the main takeaway is that we need to be more careful and we need to be more aware about the whole climbing Mount Everest thing. It might not be a big deal to you, because you'll never want to climb Mount Everest. I don't fucking want to climb Mount Everest, despite everyone telling me I should, just because I'm Nepali. But to a lot of people, it's more than just a symbol, it's their home. And they would hate to see their home fucking be destroyed because some dude from England wants to have the title Conqueror of Everest, even though the guides who are helping him have that title 6 times over. It's a little bit sad. But yeah. Hopefully, this video taught you something. Maybe just a crumb of regulation. Maybe a crumb of regulation and a bit of subsidies. Maybe a few fines. Maybe the Nepalese government did introduce something in 2014, I think, that fined climbers who left behind waste or didn't pick up waste on their way down. That's a good initiative. Yeah, just Photoshop yourself. Photoshop yourself climbing Mount Everest. Just get the original Edmund Hillary, Tenzing Norgay, bam bam, faces on it. Alright, I need to end this video.